Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, March 9th, 2020, and I haven't made a Senate video in a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and start making these pretty much every month until we start getting closer to the actual election cycle. Obviously, the primaries are still going on right now, so I'm not going to focus too much on Senate and House races, mainly because that's not what we're focusing on for this election. Obviously, during the 2018 midterms, it was practically every 2 weeks that I made a Senate or House video, and that made sense because it was the midterm elections. But this time, I'm going to try to keep a little bit more of a focus on just the the presidential primaries, and then move on to the general election, but I won't forget about the Senate and the House. Though, as of yesterday, we have seen an announcement that former governor of Montana, Steve Bullock, is now running to be United States Senator from the state of Montana. So that's going to be really interesting. He said that he was going to, and I don't know why I said that he was the former governor, mixing him up, but he's the current governor of Montana, but he said that he was not going to run. He was a former 2020 presidential candidate. He stayed in for just a little bit of time. I don't think there was this entire big push for him to drop out. He dropped out way before anything drastically important happened. He got cut off from the debate stages pretty early, and it just really did not help his campaign one bit. But he also said that he was not going to run for Senate at all. I mean, that was completely out of the question. And then he announced today that he would be running for Senate. So a lot of my predictions in the past have been assuming that Montana was either likely or safe. And as a state that typically doesn't vote down ballot in all of their races, it should be pretty interesting taking a look at that one. So we're, of course, going to characterize all of the safe Republican states and then the safe Democratic states like Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota. Why is it lagging? Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. I guess it's cool because you can see it, but I think it's just my computer, probably like overheating or something, but I hope not. And then also West Virginia. We do see Richard Ojeda running again, but realistically not the biggest shot at flipping West Virginia. And I genuinely do not think that West Virginia is going to flip in 2020, even with the almost perfect candidate, because there is a Republican incumbent. They are pretty much only sticking on and holding on to the Democrats that have been in for a while and are known super well throughout the state, not just had a pretty good shot at a House seat back in 2018. But these are pretty much the only quote-unquote safe races I would characterize in this. Probably Tennessee as well. Not Mississippi. We're going to talk about Mississippi. South Carolina actually would be characterized as safe. I know there's this whole argument that it could be likely because of increased turnout amongst African-American voters, but being completely honest, South Carolina is probably still going to be 15% margin, even if the presidential election may not be. Alaska as well. I don't know why I forgot about Alaska. Didn't mean to do that. That one I would also consider safe for the Republican Party. So that puts the Republicans at 41 seats, the Democrats at 35. Let's talk about some safe Democratic seats. That includes states such as Oregon, New Mexico, Illinois, Minnesota. Moving over, Virginia. Being completely realistic, we know Virginia is going to be a Democratic state in both the presidential election and also if you take a look and move it over into the Senate elections as well. I know that there's a little bit of an argument about Minnesota and New Mexico, but generally these are Democratic states, and it doesn't look like Donald Trump is going to help the Republicans in any of these. Minnesota probably could move down to likely, actually, so I'm going to remove that from the safe column. But New Mexico, Oregon, Virginia, Illinois, I genuinely believe that these will be 15-point margins. New Jersey, Delaware, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, these are safe Democratic areas. Not so much New Hampshire, not exactly safe, but definitely likely at this point, but I did not cover likely states, but I'm just going to keep Minnesota because I already filled it in, and I don't want to go back and change it again because there would be no point if it has the same characterization at the end. But that leaves a total of 44 seats for the Democrats that are considered safe and 41 for the Republicans that are also considered safe, leaving a total of 15 toss-up states. Now, obviously, I haven't characterized all of the likely states, so there are some states that are still going to go to the Republican Party by a likely margin. That's just how the elections end up going. I would say states such as Kentucky or Mississippi. Now, Mississippi and Kentucky, Number one, Kentucky, very unpopular incumbent. This is Mitch McConnell's seat. He is up for re-election, running against Amy McGrath and Rocky Adkins. We haven't had the primary yet, so we don't know who's going to be the nominee. Also, we haven't had a primary over, I think, what state was it in? There was a certain state that we haven't had a primary in for the Senate elections. I'll come back to that one. But Kentucky and Mississippi. Kentucky is just going to be contested just because of how unpopular Mitch McConnell is. But at the end of the day, it was Massachusetts. Ed Markey's seat right now against Joe Kennedy III. They actually will not hold the primary till September 1st. They held a primary for the presidential election on Super Tuesday. They did not hold the Senate primary there. They are waiting till September. But Kentucky, Mississippi, these are two states that a popular incumbent in one and then recently elected incumbent in the other. Still a close race, same candidates as last time. Primary actually tomorrow. I believe the Senate primary is there as well. Should be pretty interesting. So we'll go ahead and take a look at, I guess, those results tomorrow, but I don't think it'll change the characterization pretty much at all. Moving over into other likely Republican states, I would say Georgia at large would be considered likely. There haven't been too many candidates running in either of these elections. I know John Ossoff is running in one, and there aren't the least notable candidates, but I generally don't think that the Democrats have a real shot at winning in these two states. I guess not two states, into these two seats in the same state. Georgia does have the possibility of going to the Republican Party in both seats, possibly the Democrats in one, Republicans in the other. But at the end of the day, they're probably going to end up voting the same. The special election I may end up characterizing as a lean state, but for right now, I'm going to leave the state at large as likely. For the Democrats, I would say New Hampshire is still a likely state, even though I'm not characterizing it as a safe state. I would characterize it as likely. Same thing in Colorado. I mean, Colorado, even though there's a Republican incumbent, Cory Gardner is so disliked in the state itself. We have John Hickenlooper, a popular governor, running for Senate there. It's going to be a pickup for the Democrats. A win is a win, and I do think that it will be a likely margin when it comes down to it. Moving over to Texas, I actually think that this one will still be likely. We don't see any top Democratic names. No Beto O'Rourke, no Julian Castro, and nothing really for the Democrats there in Texas. So it seems like they've pretty much given up in this Texas race. To be honest, maybe it is a little bit too early for Beto O'Rourke, and he possibly could be a VP nom for Vice President Biden if he does win the nomination. For Kansas, I'm going to also characterize this one as likely, though it did elect a Democrat for the governor race back in 2018. There's no guarantee that it's going to do the same thing in the Senate race, and I generally do not think it will. Even though it is mainly an open seat, we just still need to focus on the fact that even with a unpopular Republican nominee, if Donald Trump is on that ballot, he is going to have an impact on these voters that is going to positively impact the Republican Party. Midterm elections, when Donald Trump, the only way to send a message to him is by electing a Democrat. Well, in this case, people are probably going to stick with Donald Trump and try to send a message elsewhere because I can tell you this much, Kansas is still a Republican state. And the only reason why the Democrats did well in the last election was because there was a significant portion of the Republican Party's vote being taken away as well. But besides that point, let's keep taking a look at some of these other quote-unquote likely states. I actually do not see any remaining. So let's talk about some lean states for both the Republicans and the Democratic Party. So Alabama, I would definitely characterize as a lean state for the GOP. I wouldn't go so far as saying it's tilt. I do think that Doug Jones is going to end up losing this race. Maybe not by a super large amount, obviously. That's what the whole lean characterization is for, but I still think that he is going to lose the state of Alabama. This will be a Republican pickup as of right now, unless something drastically changes. It looks like it's going to be another Republican face-off between like Tuberville or something versus Jeff Sessions. By the way, Jeff Sessions is running again, so it should pretty much be a blowout if it is Jeff Sessions as the nominee, but I shouldn't expect a huge endorsement from Trump there, if one at all. But regardless, Republican in Alabama still going to carry it. Roy Moore was definitely a one-time thing, but so Alabama goes to the Republican Party. As for the Democrats, I do think that they will carry the state of Michigan. I think that one will be a lean state. I don't think it's going to be likely. This is a realistic pathway for the Democratic Party to get closer to a majority. They would end up picking seats up by the end of this prediction, which you will see. Georgia, I might say the special election is lean, but it still could move over into the likely column. But as of right now, I'm going to characterize it as lean. Now, for the state of Arizona, I would also characterize this one as lean for the Democratic Party. Mark Kelly has just been doing very, very well in this state. Actually, a new internal poll from Martha McSally's campaign shows her only up by 2%. If your own internal poll where you're trying to make the numbers look good for yourself while accurately assessing the general public, obviously the margin's still going to be close, but you should still be winning by a pretty large amount. And a +2 for a Republican incumbent who already lost in 2018 when every other poll says otherwise definitely is not a good look. And not just that, Mark Kelly definitely has the credentials and the experience, maybe not politically, but definitely for people in Arizona that definitely could move him on to winning the Arizona Senate seat. It is possible that we see 2 Democratic senators from Arizona at the end of 2020, which could be very, very interesting. Moving over into Maine, this one is really interesting. I'm going to move away from Maine and come back. Montana, I actually think this one will be a tilt Democratic state just because of the popularity of Steve Bullock, that I think that his campaign will be, skyrocketed just based off the fact that he is the popular governor, and he's a Democrat in a state that typically votes Republican on the presidential level, but not always in the Senate and House level. It is generally pretty close, and they already have one Democrat that survived the 2018 Republican Senate wave. So pretty much, I do think that the Democrats will pick up the state of Montana, though I do expect a win for the Republicans in Iowa. I expect another win for them in North Carolina. I think both of these states will be lean margins. I do not think that they will be likely, but I do think that they will be ending up in the lean column for the Republican Party, just based off of party history and the candidates running, though some data may show that North Carolina is a little bit more contested. Again, Republican history, and also typically doesn't bode well for Democrats in Senate elections during general election years. But the state of Maine, I'm going to actually leave this one as a pure toss-up. We have just seen a huge, dramatic drop in terms of approval for Susan Collins in the state of Maine, and that's definitely not going to do any good for her. However, she is still reliant on that base that still elected her by a pretty substantial margin the last time, and I do think that she will have a pretty substantial amount of the vote to hold on to. There's no guarantee that she does end up winning by a large margin or losing by a large margin. I do think that the race will be insanely close, but as of right now, I'm not comfortable characterizing it as a Democrat or Republican state. As we get closer, obviously, I'll have a lot more data to base my projection on, but right now I'm going to leave Maine as a toss-up. So that leaves one toss-up state, 50 Republican seats, 49 Democratic seats, with a net gain of 2 for the Democratic Party. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.